My name is Fred Kasten. I, for 31 years now, have been associated with the NPR affiliate in New Orleans, WWNO. Over the course of, I've actually been officially retired from that position since 2007, though I continue to do a lot of work for them as a freelancer and now have a jazz show. I'm down to just doing one thing after doing many things, even in retirement for them. But over the years there, I did a lot of different things. I had a chance to do almost every kind of experience in broadcasting that you can have. From producing and hosting jazz and classical music programs to a lot of feature work, particularly in the field of the arts, which we're so richly endowed with great talent in New Orleans. So I've had an opportunity over the years to do, I don't know, several thousand interviews probably with all kinds of folks. I would say 75% of those would be with artists of various disciplines. Also have produced a good bit of news type content as well as arts features. Most recently, one with Bob Marshall, a fine Pulitzer Prize winning writer here in New Orleans, a 13-part series on coastal erosion issues called Louisiana, what do we call it? Last Call, the Louisiana coast, dealing with the Louisiana coast. And that we were lucky enough to win an Edward R. Murrow Award for. So thank you. We've had, I've had a variety of experiences producing live concerts, jazz and classical music, doing a whole range of things. About whatever you can do in broadcasting, I had the chance to do. I think the best thing probably that happened in New Orleans in the 20th century was the Jazz Fest, in terms of allowing the culture not only to be accessed, but also stimulating growth and giving an opportunity actually to make a better living for a lot of people involved in it. Now that also has a fairly large arts and crafts component, and of course it has a huge food component as well. So a lot of the essentials of New Orleans, the food, the music, and the bon vivant, laissez-faire attitudes were all on big display at Jazz Fest, and I think that has had a significant impact not just on the city and the culture and who comes here, but on a much wider impact. It was a big musical and variety show extravaganza that he and three colleagues were going to put up the money to bring to New Orleans at the Municipal Auditorium, which was segregated in this way. Whites had the ground floor and blacks were assigned to the balcony. Well, they immediately sold out the balcony. So he went to the director of the manager of the auditorium and said, look, we sold that out, can we get some seats somewhere on the ground floor? And they kept selling, they ended up putting like 500 seats on the stage, and ultimately they said the ground floor seats had not sold that well to whites, so they allowed him to sell seats on the ground floor right next to where the whites were sitting to black people. And that became the first integrated performance in the Municipal Auditorium. Economy, I guess you say, might drove that one, but it was, I expect that the fact that he and his family were so well respected in the community, and I don't know who his colleagues were in promoting the show, but probably their circumstances were the same. For some of the, had contacts for some of the reasons that we've been talking about, that allowed or gave him the opportunity, they trusted him then to make that change. So that was kind of, a big deal. Even though the law still said it couldn't happen, it did happen. And I think you saw that repeated in a number of ways over time. So beginning, and particularly among the jazz community, a lot of young white talented musicians wanted to go see the best players, and they were mostly in the black community. And they would go to black clubs. They maybe weren't supposed to be there, but they would. By the 60s, when the Playboy Club opened here, those Jim Crow laws were still in effect, but the Playboy Club, Al got the job as the music director of the Playboy Club here and immediately hired Ellis Marsalis and his trio or quartet to be a part of the music there. And that band, and Al also hired a couple of black players in his band over the years. They begin to then, you begin to see more open defiance of these laws. And finally, they in some point in the 60s, the city eliminated those laws. So back to your point, I think, yes, the heterogeneity of the neighborhoods had a lot to do with the development of personal relationships, which ultimately had an impact on social and even legal life of the city. And so it began to be a much more open society. It was one of the other things that Dookie Chase restaurant was intimately involved with was offering a meeting space, a safe meeting space for whites who were interested in civil rights, and the leaders, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy, were all regulars in planning. In fact, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, I think, actually was formed in New Orleans, and it had a big impact on the civil rights movement nationwide, ultimately. But they often met in the upstairs dining room at Dookie Chase with some of the white power brokers who were interested in seeing the city develop, and understood that until these harsh laws were removed from the books, that was not going to happen.